Whine, 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 complain, complain, complain. It just seems like that's what everybody is doing nowadays. Could we get any more entitled than the generation in which we live? In which, what's odd about that is that we're living in the most abundant, resourceful era we have ever lived in, especially in the West. We have so many things, so much resource, so much supply, so many opportunities, so many things readily available at your fingertips, and yet people seem to be complaining the most. How do you explain this kind of thing? How do you explain that people could be this upset, this given to complaint or whining? I would say it comes down to two things. It is entitlement and expectation. I would say the root of all complaint of anybody, even though you may not be a part of the chorus that is sounding off online every day, but I bet you do some complaining. I've done it. We all do it to some degree. What's the root of it all? It is those two things. It is entitlement and it is expectation. Entitlement is the belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. That you are inherently, and that's the key word being used here, inherently deserving of special privileges or treatment. Now, the word inherent is interesting. It's when something exists as a permanent attribute or characteristic. It's inherent. It's in you, and that would seem to explain why people would have this sense of entitlement, because they believe there is something inside them inherent that just they came into the world with when they came out of their mother's womb. They had this inherent attribute that makes them deserving of all the abundance of resources that they're surrounded with. The reality is nobody deserves anything. You're very, very fortunate to have been born in this era. Very fortunate not to have been born in Europe during the Black Death. You're very fortunate to be born in the time and place in which you live. Inherent, something that exists as a permanent, essential characteristic or attribute. Entitled, people who inherently deserve privileges. That's what a sense of entitlement is. And people have come to believe that they deserve privileges and special treatment from others in society, from institutions, because of this permanent attribute within themselves. Well, what is it? What is it that people have that they believe qualifies them, justifies that they have access to this abundant resource? And what is it about the starving child in a third world country that somehow does not deserve that? They don't have that sense of entitlement, but yet we do. We feel we are entitled to a life of ease and one that is without suffering. Now, if you were to ask somebody outright, they would never admit to this. But when you hear the complaint, it's there. And this is going to become more clear as we go on. As I said, the two things are entitlement and expectation. What is expectation? It's the strong belief that something will happen. Expectation is a strong belief that something is going to happen. So just the fact that people have so much expectation demonstrates just how easy we've got it, and yet people complain even more. That's a very important statement. Just the fact that people have an expectation, so much expectation, which we know because of so much complaint. Just the fact that they have that much expectation demonstrates just how easy we've got it. For example, try to imagine what the average person living in the Middle Ages in Europe, for example, what expectation did they have from their rulers, from a king, a tyrannical king? The only expectation they would have is the confiscation of their property, extortion by taxes, and God knows what else. That's what they expected. There was no sense of entitlement. There was no sense of expectation to those people in the Middle Ages. I mean, what were they to expect? Why do we have such great expectation and they did not? Therefore, the fact that we complain as much as we do is all the proof you and I need that we have it better than any generation or society ever has. Isn't that true? Don't we have it better than just about anybody else has ever had it, and yet we complain the most? Our abundance, our luxury hasn't taught us to be more thankful. It's taught us to expect more. The abundance and luxury that we have has taught us to expect more. It has not taught us to be grateful. It has not taught us to be thankful. I mean, we'll see it soon here. We're in the month of October as I record this. And what's upcoming? The holiday season. And we're all going to see what happens on Black Friday and all of these things when people trample each other and fight over these things in the store. Hardly an attitude of thanksgiving or gratefulness or humility, but just people wanting, demanding more. Not a good sign for our society and our culture. Now, we express more dissatisfaction than we do gratefulness. Isn't that true? Don't we express more? Don't you see more dissatisfaction expressed online than you do thankfulness or gratefulness? We're a nation of brats. Well, does that mean we shouldn't live without any expectations? No. You should have some expectations, but your expectations should be directed at yourself and not at your environment. And that's what most people do. Most people direct their expectation, what they anticipate is going to happen, they put that on society. They put that on government. They put that on other people. They put that on corporation, whatever it may be. They put the expectations outside of themselves. They don't put the expectation on themselves. And that's what I'm going to challenge you with. You see, your environment, that means government, other people, everything. Your environment should receive gratitude, not expectation. Now, this is going to sound a little weird, okay, but just hear me out. Your environment should receive gratitude, not expectation. Why? Because you're sustained by it, right? Yet you had nothing to do with it. Think about that for a second. You are sustained by your environment. The transportation system, the sanitation system, the electrical system, on and on, the monetary system, everything, the roads that you drive on, all of these things, your environment, which you live and work with and utilize every single day, was not provided to you by you. You had nothing to do with that. You enjoy it. Sure, you have to pay fees and taxes and all of that, but it's provided for you. You had nothing to do with that. You should be thankful for it. You should be thankful that all you have to do is pay a fee, a tax. Yeah, sometimes taxes can be high. I understand all that. But come on, man. I mean, this is a hell of a lot better than people had it in the past. Believe me, this is a hell of a lot better than people had it in the past. But what if your circumstances are bad? It doesn't matter. Be grateful that there are resources that you can use to get out of where you are. Imagine what it would be like if you couldn't, if there were no resources, there were no roads, man. There were no cars. Just imagine the resources that you have. There's no phone to communicate. There's nothing. Imagine trying to get out of your circumstances. Man, you've got it so good. So no matter how bad you think things are, there's always a reason to be grateful. There's always a reason to be thankful. Be grateful there's resources. Your expectations, however, should be focused on you. That's where expectation needs to be. We don't put it there because we don't want to blame ourselves for things. And the challenge with placing expectations on yourself is that you can easily let yourself down, right? I mean, and people can turn on themselves and condemn themselves because they let themselves down. So they would much rather blame it on their environment, much rather blame it on their circumstances, blame it on other people. But our expectation should be on ourselves. Yes, we can disappoint ourselves, but if we can keep in mind that we are in a state of progress, that we are in, it's an evolution, it's a development, it's a process that we're doing, we're living through, and you are going to make mistakes. You are going to not fulfill your personal commitment. You're not going to give 110% every time. That's okay. That includes all of us. We're all like that to some degree. The issue is going to be, will you continue? And can you do this? Can you keep pushing forward without becoming an enemy to yourself? But once you make that shift, you take expectation off of your environment, your circumstances, the people and the institutions outside of you, and you put those expectations on yourself, guess what happens? You naturally stop complaining. Can you dig that? I hope you can.